Donc, bonjour à chacune, bonjour à chacun d'entre vous.
Hello to each of you who are listening to me with curiosity, interest, and willingness to learn something new and different, and not to hear something already known or common.
D'entendre des choses déjà connues, habituelles. Et de mon côté, eh bien, je souhaite vraiment m'adresser à toi, m'adresser à chacune personne qui est là en ce moment.
I'd like to speak to each of you personally, and not only that, but also satisfy the need you may have that is vital to you, but that you're probably not aware of.
Sans savoir bien que tu as besoin de cela. Alors, comment faire pour m'adresser à chacune et chacun d'entre vous?
You can see me, but I cannot see you. So how is it possible to be personal without having met you and without knowing your story?
Je ne sais pas quel visage tu as, quelle est ton histoire non plus. Eh bien, il y a peut-être une façon de satisfaire.
There's maybe a way to satisfy your unconscious needs, your deepest needs. There's maybe a way to access the person that you really are deeply and unconsciously.
Vers la personne que tu es profondément, inconsciemment. Et ce chemin s'appelle.
That path is called illness. As surprising as it can be, illness is a friend, a teacher. It is both an entrance door and an exit door.
C'est une porte d'entrée et une porte de sortie. En tous les cas, un moyen de communication, un langage.
It's a means of communication. It's a language.
Où se trouve la maladie?
Where does disease take place? Not in the sky or in your closet. It's located in your body, in your cells. It's in fact a hyperactivity of your cells. Why those cells when this body is so perfect?
Le corps qui est si parfait.
No computer or machine can replace it or even equal it. So how this body, which is so perfect, which regulates a number of extremely complex operations every fraction of a second, which allow us to survive, how the success of evolution can possibly get sick and deteriorate? The biodecoding approach solves the contradiction which I'm about to explain. Things are actually very simple. Here we have a human body. You see, for this human body, things are very simple. It has organs that we can see here, a skin, a thyroid gland, lungs, a liver. For it, things are simple. What it wants is to live and survive moment to moment.
Il veut survivre d'instant en instant. Les choses sont simples.
It's simple. It wants to catch oxygen, it wants to store food, it wants to touch and be touched, regardless our origin, our ethnicity, or our species.
Bien quelle que soit notre origine, notre ethnie, notre espèce. En effet, que l'on soit
whether we are a dog, a horse, or a human being, we are the sum of ourselves and the sum of our biological needs. These needs are stable and fixed, regardless our culture, location, and time. That's the first point. Here is the second point.
Ça, c'est le deuxième point.
This is a newspaper. Let me check the date. December 5th, 2014. What's written inside, the events, are outdated today. These news are not news anymore. Things have changed. The Dow Jones is no longer the same. The price of gas is no longer the same. The last news is no longer the same. Therefore, we have two realities. A biological reality, which wants to fulfill needs. It wants to breathe, to touch, or to mark its territory. And here we have another reality, in movement, in permanent change. How does it work between those two? How does the meeting between them happen? Quite often, it's pretty bad. It's difficult because between this world, which changes all the time, and this body, which wants to keep and satisfy its needs, there's a conflict, there's an issue, an incompatibility, an unsuitability. Though one thing is able to change. That's what brings us together today and will allow us to understand and heal. So physical needs don't change, but the outside world changes constantly. The only thing between the two which is able to adapt is the body. And adaptation may be disease. My body needs warmth, but outside it's cold. So my muscles start shaking to release heat, which helps to maintain my inner temperature. My body needs oxygen, but I am at an altitude of 12,000 feet in Mexico or Bogota, where there's less oxygen in the air. So my body, and nothing else, will adapt by producing more red blood cells. This production of red blood cells in high altitude is not a disease. Tanning in the sun is not a disease. Vomiting a toxic food is not a disease. And though it happens in the body, and it's disagreeable and uncomfortable. But at this precise moment, we understand the purpose of tanning, vomiting, and hyperglobulinemia. We know the cause and the effect, the sun and the tanning, the toxic food and vomiting or diarrhea. We can make a logical connection between the two, but in the case of disease, we lose this logic due to the time lag. If we see someone vomiting, we consult a doctor. In biodecoding, we are looking for the symbolic food that is toxic for the person. If we meet someone with a dark spot on the skin, like a melanoma, we look for what has been the symbolic attack similar to a sun exposure. If we meet someone who lives on the beach in Miami or Los Angeles and who produces too many red blood cells, we're going to look for the reason why this person is producing more red blood cells. What is it this person is reacting to? The biological decoding is very simple. The purpose of disease is very simple. The origin of disease is very simple. Disease is nothing more than a reaction to an event that is over. It's a reaction of adaptation to fulfill my biological needs in order to satisfy each part of my body when confronted to the irregularity of life and to the incessant movement of life. So when a difficulty or a catastrophe occurs, although what may be a catastrophe for one person may be an opportunity or a joy for another. So when a difficulty, a catastrophe, an unforeseen event occurs, the body will look for the organ that is adapted to perfection. When I'm throwing up a rotten piece of meat, for instance, I'm not tanning at this moment. In the same way, if there's sun, I will tan and not produce more red blood cells. My body reacts very precisely by manifesting the most adapted reaction according to the outside circumstances in order to survive. All happenings, moment to moment, either through personal life experiences or the newspapers, or biologically decoded by one organ or another.
Par exemple, voilà que une femme
For instance,
plutôt des courses, car le magasin était fermé.
A woman comes back from the grocery store earlier than planned, and she finds her husband completely naked, having sex with a man.
En train d'avoir une relation sexuelle avec un homme.
At this moment, she's completely in shock. It's unbearable. It's impossible.
Choquant pour elle, inacceptable, impossible.
At this moment, she has an emotion, a feeling inside her body. Her feeling is not in her pocket, on her shirt, in her closet, or in her car.
Cette émotion, elle a un espace de conscience.
This emotion has a space of consciousness, a space of dramatization that is the body. What is the emotion? It's the conscious sign of an unsatisfied biological need. In fact, the psychic unconscious is the biological conscious of my needs. This woman surprises her husband, and she feels it's filthy, it's disgusting. What she sees is dirty. At this moment, she starts a diarrhea. The problem takes place in the colon, since the colon is the place which manages and solves the nasty difficulties of life. In other words, the shit. Another case scenario may be that this woman feels devalued. She feels worthless. She feels destroyed, shattered by this experience. She feels like losing her structure. Which organ in the body carries the psychology of this emotion, this feeling? The skeleton, the bones, which are the structure of the body and which allow us to stand and to move forward.
Et qui sont là pour nous maintenir debout, nous permettre d'aller de l'avant.
And if I feel I don't have any value, then the bones disappear because they become useless. She will develop osteoporosis. Or this woman can feel separated, torn apart, disconnected from this man. The part of the body which allows contact is the skin. She no longer feels to be the wife of this man. She feels estranged from him.
L'épouse de cet homme se sent étrangère à lui.
And she will start a skin condition like eczema.
Ainsi, nous sommes l'ensemble de nos.
In this way, we are the sum of our organs, of our cells,
C'est-à-dire,
meaning the sum of our biological functions of adaptation. That is the sum of our biological needs. And each need calls for satisfaction in order to survive. If it is not satisfied, then emerges this signal, this information, this language, this means of communication that is the emotion. The emotion is very specific. The emotion stems from the body, from the cells, in a very precise manner. If I feel anger and injustice, it will impact the bile ducts. If I feel lacking of food, it will impact the liver. Fear of dying will impact the lungs. If someone invades my territory and does not respect my boundaries, it will affect the bladder, since biologically and ethologically, the bladder allows to mark the limits of my territory, my boundaries.